what I wanted to do with our program is to have students actually experience the work, because we all know, listeners, everybody knows that that's where you learn, right? I mean, the two pillars of our programs, industry first and experiential. Those are the two pillars, because those are going to be the two things that are going to get you hired.
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a roundtable discussion covering a wide variety of topics from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Your hosts, Jason Thompson, John Naran, Jen Coons, and myself, Jim Driscoll, all live in different areas of the world, but work together in the same company. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others.
Crazy about that, the no USBs and no HDMI was what drove me crazy.
Yeah.
So that I couldn't just, when I go to present, it's just like, plug right in HDMI, no problem. And now it's like, you got to get the dongle.
You have to make sure you bring your adapter with you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So did Jim talk with you about kind of the format and how we do it? And you've listened to the podcast before, but any questions or anything before we get
No,
going?
dude, I'm religious in the podcast, man. I love it.
You're too kind.
No way,
That's
man.
awesome.
You're too kind. All right, so I figured what we would do is we would just do kind of our warm open, and then just have you do a quick intro, and then I think go from there. I mean, you have so many stories that we can talk about what you're building out, and I know you had the new framework that you just published on. So wherever you want to talk, I'll let you kind of lead the conversation. I'll
That's
ask
cool.
questions, but cool.
Yeah.
Jim, cool.
Yep, cool. So I'll go ahead and kick things off. And I guess to get things started, like I'm super excited about this conversation for many reasons. But one of the key things, I think the timing of having it fits in really, really well, because this is just something, Jason, you and I have gone back to multiple times over the last couple of months. And it's not even like on purpose. It just kind of gravitates back to the topic of mentoring and coaching. And no matter where you're at in your career, whether you're in college or whether you've been in your career for 20 years, finding someone that can provide you guidance. So, this week we have Stephen Marshall, who is an associate professor and the department chair at East Tennessee State University. He's responsible for the vision and management of the Department of Media and Communication, which consists of 15 plus full and part-time faculty and staff, as well as 400 plus undergraduate and graduate students. And I know over the last 2 years, Jason, you and Stephen have worked together in coaching college students. And like I'd mentioned, we've talked about the importance of having a mentor a lot lately. So that's why I'm really excited to have Stephen with us today. But before we really dig in, Stephen, I mean, I don't think that intro did any kind of justice, but at least wanted to set the table. But I think a good place to start is if you can tell us a bit more about yourself, your role with the university, and maybe start off talking a bit about how you and Jason got connected and what you've done.
Yeah, sure. And I want to first of all say thanks to both of you guys and 33 Sticks and the Tangents, team here to be on this thing. But the one thing I'm bumming about already being on this podcast is we've lost the tangent part of this. Because I listen to this all the time, and I was so excited when I heard Jason talking about his weighted blanket, because I have one, and I'm like, I've got a brother out there. Yes, weighted blanket brother.
And bass, and we can bond over lots of things.
That's right, dude. We can. I'm not the cook. I can never claim to be the cook, but I may start doing pour over coffee. Who knows? So really awesome to be on here. I'm so excited to talk about a lot of stuff with you guys. We are the first university in the world that has our program that's an enterprise level with Adobe, which is something we'll get into. But the conversation here today really, with Experience Cloud, by the way, but the conversation here today really is about mentoring. And there's nothing in my life that cannot be traced back to a mentor. And I think that my own personal narrative is kind of important to start things off because I'm an accidental academic. I'm not somebody that went through an academic role, kind of, undergraduate, master's, PhD kind of thing. I was working at Nielsen as an account person, working for agencies and broadcast networks, cable networks, PR agencies in New York and Chicago, and handling Spanish language right when this is 1998 or so, right when the Spanish language was really, popping, and helped launch ESPN Deportes. There was like the initial conversations around that. I didn't really help launch it, but I helped those first conversations around measuring that audience and got really into it. And this is 1998, so nobody's carrying around a supercomputer in their pocket yet. But decided I wanted to go back to school to really heavy up and run and be an account planner, and went back to the University of Florida and had some great mentors there that said, you know what, why don't you do a PhD? And I said, geez, I'm not that smart. And again, this is like I'm 6 years, so I'm 30 years old in a classroom again. Gave up a really great opportunity. Well, didn't give it up opportunity, but I saw an opportunity. But just basically went back to ramen noodles, right? At 30 years old, and and then really had someone take me under their wing that was the chair of the department, Dr. John Sutherland, and some other folks that said, no, man, we could put you in a classroom right now. You could teach, audience data and this kind of thing. We need someone to teach media planning. So I thought, what the hell, I'll try it. And then that really moved me into a space where I am today, which is really in the classroom, doing this great work that I get to do, and really contributing to the lives of these students. So you fast forward to 2006 at that point, and I get this job at East Tennessee State University. Why East Tennessee State University? Because I like mountain biking. That sounds crazy, but I wanted to live in a place that had a great lifestyle, and I wanted to. When I got here, I met people from the community, and I felt like this is someplace that I can really contribute and give back. And I've been here. I've been here for 13 years now. But
Wow.
I basically had been in that role as a professor for about 5 years, and realized about 2011, and realized that we have MySpace, we have Facebook, we have all these things that were happening, right? And I'm more than a decade disconnected from industry. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to be that guy in the classroom that talks about the way it used to be, when I had clients and all this kind of stuff. And so I basically went to an agency here in town and said, in the summertime, and said, look, I know you guys are trying to get ramped up in digital. I am too. Let me just come in and start contributing, and you guys can start paying me when you think I have value. And I mean, so my wife called it my pretend job, and I went to it every day. And she's like, "Do you have a vacation day from your pretend job yet?" And I did. I had a desk and everything, and it wasn't but a month before I started getting paid there. But really, at that same time, and I know you guys don't talk too much about real clients in here, but we ended up landing Coca-Cola, and CokeSolutions.com is an AEM site, and we were and still are, the agency of record, creative energy agency of record for promoting this. This is going back 4 years now. And started working with them. And I asked the guys at Coke, I mean, we're promoting this website, and the website had some challenges. And I said to the guys at Coke, I said, do you guys care if I get into the back end of this thing? Because internally at the agency, we're like, if we're not converting like they expect, then we're going to lose this gig, right? So we can drive traffic there, but if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then we're going to be in trouble. So they gave me the keys to the back end. It was on Web Trends. So fun, like, flashback there for everybody on this podcast.
It's been a while.
And so yeah, so anyway, the short story here is that mentor, right? So mentoring at the University of Florida, people that said, we see something in you that you don't see. We're gonna help you. We're gonna move you along this path because we think you'd be good at it. Go to this agency. Again, it's like, hey, I just want to learn, and I had some amazing mentors that really taught me it's okay to be uncomfortable and to sell something that you can do, but you just haven't done it yet, right? And that's kind of what we've done. That's what a lot of agencies do, right? We all know that. But then that introduced me to Adobe and to at the time the marketing cloud. And then I went to my Adobe folks on campus, the creative cloud people, and I said, "Who's teaching with this marketing cloud thing? I can't obviously put my students in web trends for Coca-Cola. So how do I get my students engaged in what's happening with this whole thing?" And they said, "You know what? We don't really know, but we'll find out." And there's been a really awesome uh, the analytics challenge has been going on for a decade now or something, which has been an amazing transformative experience for students. But I wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to bring enterprise level. I wanted to bring multiple tool set to the opportunity to teach. And so we became the first university in the world really with our model, which basically is AEM, analytics, target, and live fire. And we put students in a space to actually do work for the university and for external customers, external clients while they're in our graduate program. We're trying to scale that to the undergraduate program. But again, and then I met people at Adobe, and people at Adobe started seeing value in me, and I saw value in them, and I had some amazing mentors at Adobe, and that transformed into what I'm doing now as a CMO for a company called Siren Marine, which is a marine technology IoT company up in Rhode Island, and really scaling big data to the marine space, because believe it or not, nobody's cracked the nut on having an app for your boat except for us. And we're way ahead of probably a year and a half ahead of those major marine electronics players that might start with a G and some others that are out there. So um, there's nothing to my path, and I still to this day write letters to John Sutherland, who's now retired, to Tony and Teresa Treadway, who are at the agency that's across town, but I write them thank you cards and stuff, because I would not have been on this journey without these amazing mentors. And I wouldn't have been on this journey without being able to have the humility to know it's okay to not know something, and to ask, and mentoring is it's an awesome responsibility. If you're going to mentor somebody, that really means you're not just like there for somebody. That means you're going to like give something of yourself, your resources, your time, right? To the betterment of somebody else. And I've had great opportunities to leave the university and to do some or to go to other universities. But to leave the university, go back in industry. I keep my foot in this industry because I love to do the work, but there's nothing better than I have now 10 years out to see students that, say, I can see what they're doing, or to run into students. And I ran into a guy whose wife was in my class at the University of Florida when I was teaching. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're my wife's favorite professor." I'm like, "Holy crap." I'm like, wasn't even a professor then. And, like, what kind of an awesome contribution to somebody's life can you have like that? You know what I mean? So, and I just think everybody on your podcast here can reach out and connect to somebody and do that for somebody else.
Yeah, agreed, and I think it's a good point because I think a lot of people, especially in this industry, want to give back and help, but are waiting for a formal framework or opportunity to do that. And while that's nice and helpful, there's so many people that need help and are looking for it. And so, agreed. I've long thought that way, and it's been one of the reasons why I've gone out of my way to look for opportunities to give back, because I think back through my career, and if so many things didn't line up, and people lined up to help me, I'm like, I don't know that I would be here, and it's not fair for me to think I did this on my own, because there's just no way that would have happened. And so my way of giving back is, and to thank those people that mentored me along the way, is to pay it forward and provide that for people. So I did want to follow up on one thing you said that was really interesting. You mentioned the importance of being open to admitting what we don't know. It's so difficult, because I see it all the time where people just have this fear, especially going into big corporations, that I have to know everything. I have to know all the answers. And it's so difficult to learn if we are not able to admit that we don't know things and we need help. Are you seeing that in your graduate students? Are they more open? If you are seeing it, are what are types of things that you're doing or saying to help people overcome that fear and let them know that it's actually a strength and not a weakness to admit?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that by learn by doing, right? So I think that my students, I'm very open with things I don't know. I'm very comfortable. I'm confident in what I know and what I do, but I also am confident that I know that I don't know a lot of stuff about a lot of things. And so I think, not falling victim to that myself, Jason, is probably leading by example. And I've got folks on teams that I manage that don't do that, and they can't, like, they can't say I don't know, or they can't just say, you know what, I screwed that up. I'm someone that firmly believes in letting. I'm First of all, let me just say I'm a terrible micromanager. Like, I'm awful. So, and like, you guys are always giving tips on, like you guys had a podcast a few weeks ago on organization and stuff, and I'm trying, like, this new
Man, you are an avid listener.
dude. I'm telling you, I listen to you guys all the time. You guys are my running buddies.
Oh
Um,
man.
so I'm like trying to figure out how I can, my superpower is efficiency, but I'm always trying to figure out how to get better at it. But it's that ability for you to just be confident, and be confident enough to ask the question. And I always say, look, at this is what I'll say to somebody. I have no problem letting my ignorance fly, so I'm going to ask this question. And I'll serve it up that way, and that way it just kind of makes it clear that, I have some confidence, but I'm unclear about this. And ignorance is not a bad word. Ignorance does not mean stupid. You know, so I think that's an important part of it. Now, at the same time, you have to be ready, especially with undergraduate students, because if you could draw a line of entitlement from when I started teaching till now, it's like, it's just like, straight up and to the corner, from one point on the graph to the other opposite point on the graph. I mean, I have students that say and ask stuff that are not coming out of ignorance, or coming out of entitlement, and it's a weird
Mm.
deal. Um, but I think that if you can show that confidence, and challenge people to know that this is an industry. If you're going to get into this industry, there's going to be something that you did not know yesterday that you know today, and that's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen almost every day. You know, and the people that say this industry changes like overnight, well, come on. Foundationally it doesn't, but it does move really quick, and we all are at the mercy of some of the big giants who decide how algorithms are going to work. And if you're not keeping up with that kind of stuff, and you're not willing to keep up with that kind of stuff and challenge your own knowledge, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna go on a tangent. So we're trying out this new platform so we can have video feed, and we're not exposing that, but we're using it to see if we can have better visual cues with each other. I need to get me whatever you're rocking with that. Is it ETSU hoodie thing, whatever you got going on?
Oh, dude, I'll send you one right away. I'll send
That
one to both of you
that
guys.
looks awesome. Um, so would love to hear about I guess some of the challenges and some of the successes you've had as you've been building out this program, maybe both at the university level and then maybe individually. I know I've had the opportunity to talk one on one with several of your students. So smart, so passionate about getting out there. If there's any stories there that you can talk about, as far as preparing these kids to hit the ground running the minute that they walk out of your program.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I feel like I've been drugged behind a truck, for both of those things, from the university's perspective, and from Adobe's perspective. Just because I come to Adobe and say, okay, I want to teach this stuff, and it's going to be enterprise level, and yeah, I mean, they're not getting Adobe doesn't give stuff away, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so. And so how do we do it? How do we get 60 people into an AEM instance? That's a question that they know how to answer. But how do you do it where you have to change the IDs every semester?
Yeah.
and those kinds of questions. And then from my school's point of view, um, wait a second, you're going to have students doing marketing for the university, but they're not going to be reporting to the university marketing. I don't know that I like that. And honestly, I mean, we're 3 years into it, and we started this brand and media strategy program. We're not in the College of Business, so
Mm,
and I think it's a misnomer. I mean, I partnered up with the College of Business in 2012 and helped them ideate a first digital marketing program in the state of Tennessee. One of the first ones, I think, in the whole country. It's 100% online. And now I think it's just kind of a misnamed program. Not, it's a great program. Don't get me wrong, and I still teach in it, by the way, too. But I think what part of marketing isn't digital? I mean, what part of what we do now, consumer insights and understanding how we're going to convert somebody in the customer journey, what part of that isn't digital anymore? So I'll be on a panel in April here. It's April 1st today. I'll be on a panel in April talking about this digital marketing curriculum and stuff. And some of the questions were like, if you're going to have one class of digital marketing, what's it going to be? And I'm like, that's just such a poor way to think about it. Because every aspect of what we do has a digital component. And even when we do print pieces, we're trying to drive people some way digitally so we can at least measure the outcome of that, or a television broadcast or whatever it might be. And so, it's been really trying to transform the university to think about things differently. And it's been trying to transform Adobe. And this stuff is hard. I mean, when
yeah.
you guys know, I mean, the analytic installation of this thing is a challenge, but just the server environment and everything else around it has been just a ridiculous challenge. But at the same time, we've gone from 7 students that came from what was called a professional communication program to a pipeline of more, potentially over 100 students here starting in the fall. That's 2 years.
Wow.
And when you talk about a university that is challenged by enrollment, which as part of what I've done with Adobe, coming back into the mentoring discussion, I mean, I pitched this whole thing. I got 3 slides into it with the vice president of education sales for Adobe, and he said, "I'm just going to stop you right here." This was again 4 years ago. He said, "I'm going to stop you. I'm just going to tell you right now, we're going to do this. Now you can just keep talking to me." And so, because I pitched them, it's not like they pitched me on this. I went to them
Right.
and said, "I got to get my students in this space. You got 85 of the top 100 Fortune 500s on this platform, and nobody's teaching with it. That's freaking crazy." And so, uh, you know, but moving forward, it's been a ridiculously successful thing, but it's still so hard. I mean, we still are trying to get the bugs out of stuff, and we're still really trying to use the tools to the capacity, just like anybody that's in industry,
Yeah.
and luckily, I mean, when I pitched this to Adobe, they said, "Hey, we want to get you more involved," and that really turned me into the industry expert for higher education for Adobe. So all those verticals at Adobe have an industry expert. The last 2 years, I've been the industry expert for Adobe, talking about our story and talking about digital transformation to other universities. And then I got brought in to be a ADLS instructor, working with Fortune 500s and brands on digital transformation at Summit. I was hating the fact I was missing Summit, especially since you made a special appearance, Jason,
I
at
did.
Summit this year. My colleague Melanie Richards, who is ridiculously awesome, she is going to she's going to pop a baby out here May 5th, I think. So her doctor said, "You guys can't go to Summit," or she said, "You can't go to Summit." And I teach this digital experience full day pre-workshop Summit class with her the last 2 years, and we were going to teach it again this year. But when she couldn't go, I decided I'm not going to go either, because we're good yin and yang.
Yeah.
Um, but again, inside the Adobe organization, going in there, I listen. I don't know about this stuff. I had some great mentors within that organization, and have worked with Shantanu. I mean, so it's just the mentor. We're jumping around, and I think that's the point of the tangents. But um,
We're just having a
the
conversation.
yeah, I think the mentoring thing, is just it's a ride that you got to get on, you got to get on other people's rides, and you got to be one for yourself for others, you know.
Yeah, for sure. How are you doing all this stuff? You're everywhere. Maybe that's why our conversation's all over the place. You're doing. I've lost track of how many different things you're taking on. How do you do that?
I think my superpower is organization
Yeah.
and following the shiny object, which I know is always a bad thing to do, but I think the only way that I can do, and I think I'm maxing out, dude. Honestly,
Well, your
I hit
max is pretty high.
well, I got to a point with in November where I had the Siren Marine guys come to me and say, "Hey, what's going to take to get all your time?" And I said, I think I'd like to actually kind of just have all my time, as a consulting, so I don't have four different email addresses. And
Yeah.
one of the things you guys have not talked about, which makes sense, is a calendar sync, because I'd like to know how I sync up like four different email addresses to a single calendar. But I don't expect you guys to talk about that
No,
anytime
we've
soon.
actually been purposeful in avoiding that. We've had lots of opportunities to kind of white label and manage all these different. I'm like, we don't want to do it just from the operational inefficiency standpoint. It's a nightmare just trying to manage two calendars and emails. I'm like, I can't do it. Can't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was in November and I had an Adobe email address, I had my ETSU email address, I had a personal email address, and then I had my Siren and Marine email address, and then I had a consulting email address.
Oh man,
And
that's
and
a
like
lot.
my wife would look on my phone and she'd say, "Okay, you have 78,000 unread messages." I'm like,
Oh, I'm freaking out just hearing it.
I do.
So you mentioned something that I really liked. You said it's really difficult to work out and you're still working out the bugs. I think it's such a cool thing to expose to students because that's the real world. You mentioned it, right? Well, we work with these massive brands and that's a big part of what we do is trying to help smooth out these processes. And these are companies that have been trying to perfect it for many, many years. And it's a good lesson for these students to learn that you're not going to walk into a big name brand company and it's all going to be figured out. You're not going to walk in anywhere and everything's going to be perfect. And especially from a data analysis perspective, we see so many people get hung up with, I'd love to help with your insights and data, but I can't until this is a perfect platform. And I'm like, then you're never going to do it. So it's never
Right.
going to be perfect. So I'm glad that your students are getting exposure to that and coming up with creative ways to still be valuable while helping move things forward.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, we put them on calls when we have with Adobe, or when we have with we had hired out a developer to help us with our AEM development stuff. They're on all those calls, and then they're getting exposed to the pain points that we experience from the vendor side, and they're getting exposed to the pain points that we receive from the big house, on campus, because we're really in the middle. I mean,
Mm,
basically what I did was I took this opportunity to say to my provost, look at, I know this isn't, I mean, it's expensive to what we're doing with Adobe. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we have, they're funding, they're giving us a good price because we're the first in the world doing what we're doing. And NYU is now doing what we're doing. They're putting that in place right now, but, and others want to do the same thing. But it's no easy task to stand up. We don't just have an instance where it's like a simulator, and I think
mm-hmm.
simulation and that kind of stuff is great. But one of the things I'll go off on a tangent here for a second. We do this National Student Advertising Competition every year. It's sponsored by the American Advertising Federation, and there's more than 150 schools across the U.S. that do it. And every year it's very similar to the analytics challenge, right? You get a client, you have some real data. In this particular case for AAF, they give you a case, with a bunch of, I mean, it's basically kind of an RFP kind of looking thing. But they give you a lot of the data, but you're not ever allowed to talk to the client.
Mm,
And so you have all these universities that are competing against this with this thing. And so last year we went to the national championships. And so we beat 150 schools. We won regionals, which mean we beat every school in Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, that competed. And then we went to super regionals. We went from 150 schools to 16, and then we went top eight, and we got our butts kicked. But Syracuse was awesome. But the point is that those students, they pitch a case, they never do the work, right?
Mm,
So they never actually have to be boots on the ground. And what I wanted to do with our instance and what I wanted to do with our program is to have students actually experience the work, because we all know, listeners, everybody knows that that's where you learn, right?
yeah.
I mean, the two pillars of our programs, industry first and experiential. Those are the two pillars, because those are going to be the two things that are going to get you hired. The opportunity to meet great people like you guys and the 70 other folks that are connected to our program, and then the opportunity to do work that actually is real. And so you can say, look, this is the website I worked on. These were the campaigns we did. Our goal was to generate campus visits, and this is what the baseline of campus visits were before we started, and this is where we ended. And we had students working on this creative arts scholarship before they were working on it. I mean, this is just one thing that the university didn't have time to focus on, recruiting around students out of state coming to a program and paying in-state tuition. And so creative arts scholarships, no matter what, it's all across campus. You could be marching band. You study chemistry and be in a marching band and get a creative arts scholarship. And so 3 years ago, we had one guy that was kind of intermittently sending emails out, generated 30 new leads over 3 months. Two of my students took a role last year and took it, and they generated 300 leads in a month. And why? Because it was what I call WTF. What's the focus? And that was what was missing before they got a hold of it, was a focus. And these guys were able, I mean, education, we have the best data any company could ever want. Like, we have parents addresses, we have parents emails, we have students emails, we have what they're interested in, we have where they live. Like, we have all this. I mean, every university has this amazing amass of data, but they're just so ridiculously stupid about how they connect it. And they live on these legacy systems that are like 10 years old. And like, for the longest time at my university, they're like, don't update Java, man. You won't be able to connect to the you won't be able to connect to the if you update to the newest version, you won't be able to. I'm like, this is so stupid. Where are we? But I mean, universities are still, I mean, again, I'm not knocking my school. Every school is like this. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. And it's the amount of money that's put into, and the knowledge gap that's between the clients that you guys get to work with and education. It's just a super major challenge to try to close that gap.
It is, and I'm interested because you are all over the place and you are connected to so many different organizations and people. What you're hearing from industry as far as the talent gap looks like, and are they asking you specific things about here's what we need from students coming out of school?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that so Adobe's doing a really great video on us. And this, I mentioned the 70 people, of which, Jason, you're one of them. And so, I'm gonna light that back up here once this video gets out, and really hit you guys back up and ask you that very question. Because I'm having those conversations, intermittently with people, but I want to be more defined and more rigorous with discovery around that, because we're really looking at the branded media strategy program that we built. We designed that to be interdisciplinary and experiential. So we have a core of classes that we know that people need to have, regardless if you're somebody that wants to be, my students are not developers, and my students are not data scientists. They are going to be marketing practitioners. And so they're going to need to be able to get into, but they can be heavied up in the analytics space, and they can come in and know how to get around in, and we want to expose them to the certifications and the platforms that are there, such as Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, and those kinds of things. Even, HubSpot, we have some HubSpot stuff. HubSpot has some really great learning tools
They
for
do.
educators. And so we've partnered with HubSpot too,
Very
to do
cool.
that. But we have to get more defined in the undergraduate space to that question, because we're getting ready to blow up our undergraduate curriculum. And to be industry first, we have to have people like you helping us with that. What is it that we need to be arming industry with? And then also we have to be able to have people like you guys say, um, I want to show you some student work and I want you to critique it and tell us not necessarily what the student's not doing, but what the program's not doing. And that way we can make the program better. So, so those are things that we're, I'm going to fire that back up. But when you have the Digital Marketing Institute in 2017 saying only 8% of current digital marketing practitioners are entry level, that means 92% of the folks that are currently working right now are not even entry level.
That blows my mind.
And the reason for that is because we, academe, we're not putting those people out because we're having conversations around, yeah, I think I'm gonna add a digital class to my curriculum. Bullshit. That's crazy. I mean, uh, your whole curriculum should have digital pieces. And that again, that's the other way we looked at this. Because I when I went to my provost and said, "Look, we want to do this," he says, "Well, are you going to have a whole new curriculum?" I said, "No. Why would we do that? We have curriculum. All we need to do is figure out the way that we look at this is in the Amen model that we have, this applied marketing education norm model that we have, is basically you look at your curriculum and you say, okay, think about it like salt, right? Do you just put like the same amount of salt in everything, or do you have just one recipe? Like, okay, now here's the salt course. Here's a bowl of salt. Enjoy it, right? You don't do that, right? You
Right.
you you flavor to taste, and so some classes can have a big digital component. Other classes should have a smaller digital component, but
Mm-hmm.
it's basically like a recipe. And so what I said to my provost is I don't have to make new curriculum if we have a PR writing class, why would we have these guys writing releases? Why wouldn't we have them write them on AEM and pick out a hero image and figure out what it looks like in mobile versus desktop, right? Have them working in the tools that they're going to be putting these things out in real life, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, I said to my provost, I'm very happy to say we will. I mean, we had to put a whole pro forma together to figure out how we fund this, and we figured out how many students we need. And my provost said, "Well, what if we don't recruit enough students to pay for the licensing from Adobe?" I said, "Then you can dock my salary, but
Wow.
but if we recruit more, then you better be ready to pay me." Because of the question you just asked, there is such a talent gap. I knew that this thing was going to be successful. Now, I'll tell you, I didn't know it was going to be so successful graduate versus undergraduate. And it turns out the undergraduate nut has been the harder one to crack than the graduate one. The graduate one, you have 40% of students that are in the marketplace that are over 24% right now, or oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, over 24 years old
Yeah.
right now. So those are students that, I mean, in other words, two out of every five students on a campus are non-traditional, in quotes, and that's because those guys are coming back to reinvent themselves. And when you look at the baby boom is it's over, and you have a lot of folks, the birth rate just in general, there's just less college students to go around, and universities have a real challenge with competing. You have the Purdue Globals in the world, who have crept up and said, geez, we can work like a for-profit, but we have the Purdue brand, right?
Mm.
And so let's leverage that. So you have all these new competitive pieces that are part of this puzzle. And so, knowing that there's only 8% of folks that are above entry level working, and hearing from Adobe when I first asked this, and then I went to a summit and met all these folks, and we were featured in a Forrester piece that came out into 2016, how to prepare students for the digital age. Got interviewed for that. Just every single time I would do a pre-summit class, a full day class with 50 plus people, Melanie and I'd have a line of people saying, we want to partner with you guys because we need people,
Yeah.
and we don't know where to get them.
Yeah. I mean, it is such a a serious problem, and we face it with. Uh, it seems like almost every client we work with, needs more and more. And we first started seeing that with small numbers of people. With digital, it's interesting. I always thought it was companies were cheap. It's like two or three people doing the job of 10 people. But a big part of the problem is not that they're cheap and not that they don't want to invest. It's that they can't find qualified people to fit those positions. And we're hearing it all the time. And from big companies in big geos, it's not a surprise to have someone from LA call me up and like, we can't find anybody. I'm like, you're in LA. There's like 20 million people, right?
Right.
I mean, how can you not find someone? But it's really, really difficult. And that's why when you and I first started talking and I saw your vision and really creating the next generation, I'm like, even if I can just play a small part, I want to be part of this because there is such a huge need for it. And I'm a firm believer of the rising tide raises all the ships. The more smart people we can get, the more we can innovate. It's going to benefit all of us. So that's why I wanted to get involved with what you're doing. And it's such a huge thing to think about if you step back too far. I'm like, how do we solve this? It's such a big problem around the world, but you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like my dean and provost, I mean, they said the first couple years into this, like, well, Adobe's sending you all over the place to talk about this. I mean, what are we going to do when all these students don't come to our program? I'm like, are you crazy? Like, there's such a ridiculous need for this. There's way more love to share, and
Yeah.
that's why I was so happy and I'm always happy to have this conversation with other universities. That's the one great thing about academia is that we overshare and we just give it away. And you're not going to have Coke and Pepsi talk about what strategy worked awesome. Um, but I'm happy to share that, and other folks are happy to share that, in our space because that's what we do, and it's benefiting everybody. But I mean, to your point, I mean, you were quick, you and Adam Jenkins and Rudy, you guys were. I mean, Adam heard about this, and like he and I were on the phone for almost 2 hours the first time he heard about it. He's like, "Oh man, I got to tell Jason about this, and I got to tell," and it just like that's how it happens. It's just a snowball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I've got 70 folks that I know or have reached out to me that are like, "Hey, local, regional, national people that have just said, geez, this thing is like this is such a great idea,"
Yeah.
um, and again, it's like it's not like I sat in a room and thought of it by myself. I've had people like, I mean, I think of you as a mentor. I think of these other folks that have these quality conversations with me that help me understand your world and be able to add value to my students because of it. Um, and I just think the academic folks get so worked up in their cinder block towers and so blocked off from what's happening. There's been so much of that time that's gone by. I mean, I talked to some folks. I'll give you a great example. Uh, you know, I talked to some folks about this on my campus that were faculty. And when we first pitched this and we signed it and, okay, we're going to do this thing. And they said, I don't think my students would be very interested in this Adobe thing. I just don't think there's really anything to it. And I thought, are you kidding? Like, but my point at the time was like, okay, that's fine. Please don't get on my bus. Like,
Mm-hmm.
please, I don't need your energy. Like, I don't need to convince you that this is the right thing to do. If you don't think it is, that's fine. Just keep doing what you're doing, and then you're gonna figure it out at some point. But I don't need that energy because that's the other thing about mentoring. If you're gonna find people to mentor or be mentored, you got to get hooked up with the positive energy, or else you're
Yeah.
screwed.
Absolutely. So that's a good transition to the question. I know Jim's got to keep me honest on time here so I don't ramble forever. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I think you perfectly queued it up, is what advice would you have, whether I'm a student in a graduate program or I'm working in the corporate world and I don't have a mentor, I don't have a structure within my organization to find one. What advice would you give me? Because I want one. I just don't. It seems overwhelming. Where do I just throw it out there and ask, or how do I find the right person for me?
Yeah, so great question. So I think if I am an industry person, then I would just look to my most local, institution, and I would just do a look see on a search and figure out what faculty member um, on at that institution looks like it matches up with the subject matter expertise that I have, and then I would just reach out and say, you know what, I'm here. I'm in the space, and I would love to be involved in your program or be involved with you, for guest speaking or anything like that. And you can start it off small. I mean, my ask to you, Jason, was, look, I have three things I want to ask. Number one is, will you do a guest lecture once every year, or even once every other year? I mean, we've got
I got
70
behind.
folks. Yeah, we'll get you in there. But the second thing is I need you to look at student work, and then the third thing to help not to grade a student, but to grade me. And again, that's the humility of my approach. But and then the third thing is for us was I want to be able to use your identity to tell other people about our program. So I want people to know that Jason from 33 Sticks is a partner with our program, because then that legitimizes my program. But I think as an industry person, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do is just say, um, and the other thing that we've always said to, like, we've done some really amazing stuff with Janet Starwood and some other partners, is we just said, look, at what's a project that you would love to work on but you don't have time.
Mm.
And that way there's no harm or foul. The students could like completely smoke it and make it awesome, and you're like, oh my god, this is awesome. Or they could actually just totally suck because they're students. So but you got no skin in the game either way, on that side of it, right? So those are the kinds of things like if you approach somebody and say, look, I've got this question I've been wanting to ask, and it would be a great student project. Would you have a class or somebody that was interested in doing it? I'd love to mentor. And you make it clear that, look, I'm not trying to get free work out of you. I'm just looking to be a part of something bigger than myself. I think from an educator's point of view, this is something that I talk about all the time when I'm on these panels and stuff. Is that we have to be humble, and we have to go to industry, and we have to ask industry what's happening, because we as academics, we know how things are working. I mean, we do, but we don't know tactically how they're working, and that's the difference. And like I said, I mean, these students being in Jira, these students having to work on projects with teams and having that interaction and having to build something, that's so much of a better experience than, I mean, no disrespect, and we were in the national championship. That's so much of a better experience than the AAF case, the National Student Advertising Competition. I love it. I'm going to get, if you have any listeners, they'll probably blast me for that. But those kids never do that project for Ocean Spray. They never do it,
Yeah.
right? These students have to, like, oh crap, the website's down. What are we going to do? And it's not just about websites in these programs. It's about planning events. It's about planning different types of speaker series, organizing all those things, organizing the people, generating the audience to get people to go to it. All those kinds of pieces are part of it. I mean, the Adobe piece of it, and the Google and the HubSpot and all this other stuff. That's all part of it, but the experiential is the heartbeat of it.
Jim, do I have time for one more question?
Yep, we still have a
Jim's
few
giving
more
me the
minutes.
look. What would you say to universities? Because I know there are some that are out there that says we don't want to get involved in what Steven's building at ETSU. Let's leave that to the boot camps of the world, to the applied technology centers of the world. It's just not the type of kind of academic stuff that we do. What would you say to them?
They're going to lose, man. I mean, they're going to lose bad. Because the thing about it is, it's so that question came up on my campus early on. We're not a tech school.
Yeah.
And I said, I know we're not a tech school. I mean, everything that we do has a theoretical underpinning, and all we're doing is we're activating learning outcomes with the technology that students are going to use when they get into the space. And so, if you feel like that, then get your typewriter out and start plugging those keys, or start drying your clothes on the line, and get rid of your clothing dryer. Because that's just that that frame of reference makes no sense to me. And we're not a tech school. We're not a coding camp, you know.
Right.
And there's huge value in those things. But that's not what we're doing. We're activating learning outcomes with technology. So the learning outcomes in an academic sense, those are those theoretical things that you say on your syllabus, that say at the end of this class you will be able to blah blah blah. And writing, understanding organizational structure, understanding how do you think about strategy and tactics aligned with goals. All those things, we're teaching all those things, but we're just using the tools that industry expects people to know to teach those things. So, I mean, it's the same thing that people have been teaching all along. It's just the fact that we were able to say, shoot, there's this whole world that we don't know much about that we're going to have to go figure out. And we've done that. And now we've brought it in the classroom. And guess what? I'm still freaking figuring it out every day. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have
It's
it figured
hard,
out.
right?
Yeah, I don't have it figured out. And I mean, it took us 2 rounds of a developer and a lot of money to get to where we are with just four pilot sites right now, and we're still standing up the analytics piece of it. But again, this is my call. This is my call to action for anybody listening. Let my pain be your be your fortune, because I can tell you how to avoid that stuff now. Because with anything innovative, you're gonna have things that didn't work, and you're gonna have things that that went disastrously wrong. And we've had those things, and that's where I'm happy to lend in and say, look, let me show you just how we did it. And you don't have to do it like, I mean, you don't have to stand up a whole Adobe Experience Cloud enterprise level suite to do this. I mean, you can do some amazing stuff with a university website and Google Analytics. I mean, you can do some amazing stuff with the tools that your university already has.
Hmm.
But you just have to start to broker those relationships and show the value. I mean, when I can show the value to my provost, that the students that are working on this thing are able to generate 300 new leads, um, on a project they had no time to do, there's nobody on my campus that can say anything about that.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't argue that.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's amazing feedback. And I would just kind of add to that, and say, look for opportunities. If you're in the world and you've been in here and you've got this experience, doesn't matter if it's 5 years or 15 years, you've got value to add back. So I love your advice of reaching out to local universities. Give back. People in this industry want to give back, and reach out, ask, how can I help? Can I give a guest lecture? Do you have students that I can mentor? That's been some of the funnest conversations that I've had, because I've been able to align with a few of your students just one on one, and being able to watch their progress. It's insanely rewarding. So I would push people to do that. And I would say also, on the flip side, if you're just getting started in your career, or even later in your career, I still have a core group of mentors that I talk to all the time, and I need that. If you don't have one, reach out to your network. Say, this is, I need some help. Is anybody willing? You'll be amazed at the people that line up and will be willing to help. And it is such a differentiator, that from those that have, and those that don't have that relationship, where they're able to take their career. So,
And,
dude,
and I'll pile on just real quick. I mean,
yeah.
your point of you have no idea the transformative year experience that you have created, Jason, with folks that you have had conversations with. I mean, and that's the kind of thing. I can say stuff all day long, but when Jason comes in and says the same stuff, you know, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I now believe Jason, and that's what I'm talking about, because you bring that real world credibility, and you can have a little bit of time can mean a lot to somebody.
Yeah, for sure. Give. It's rewarding, and I feel good that I can make an impact, but I always feel like I'm getting way more out of it. as a mentor, I learned so much from these students and people in their careers. So I'm happy to do it, and I really want to ask other people to step in and do that. Dude, it's been an absolute honor to have you on. Just personally, I am very appreciative for what you're building out. Our industry needs more talented people in this space, and not only are you having an amazing impact on the students at East Tennessee, but you're also having an influence on other higher education universities that are looking to model what you're building. And so I'm just super appreciative of what you've been building out, and continue to do it and be an example. We need more and better, and you're making a dent. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, dude. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on this awesome podcast that I listen to every time I run. Um, and uh, and appreciate the impact you guys have on programs like ours. I mean, we need you guys. So I just think more educators need to think about that, and there's lots of ways to do things. So, you know,
Find your path.
yeah.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to reach us, you could do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at www.33sticks.com. The 33 Tangents podcast is a production of 33 Sticks.